Hey everyone, today's deep dive is all about the Freikorps Oberland, one of the many paramilitary groups that sprang up in the aftermath of World War I. Now picture this, it's the aftermath of the Great War, Germany is in chaos and many returning soldiers find themselves out of a job. Enter the Freikorps. The story about the Freikorps Oberland starts in the murky history of the secretive and occultist Thule Society. The Thule Society was an organization founded in 1918 by a man who called himself Rudolf von Sebottendorf. It shared many similarities with the Freemasons, but was, so to say, the Nazi version of it. In the beginning of April 1919, communists in Bavaria had taken power and proclaimed the Bavarian Soviet Republic. The Thule Society had since then fought against it, and in particular its paramilitary and armed wing, the Thule Kampfbund. Later in April of 1919, Sebottendorf, together with the officer Albert von Beck and others, facilitated the formation of a Freikorps unit which was formed right out of the Thule Kampfbund. The unit was named Freikorps Oberland, and as most of its volunteers came from Bavaria, the emblem of the organization became the traditional alpine flower, the Edelweiss. They quickly grew in numbers, and in May of 1919, the Freikorps Oberland, the Freikorps Werdenfels, and Freikorps Epp was involved in the bloody and violent purge of the Bavarian Soviet Republic. Only a year after the defeat of the Communist Republic in Bavaria, the Freikorps Oberland, now partly integrated in the Freikorps Epp, was on the way to another theatre of conflict. A similar situation had emerged in the occupied Ruhr region of Western Germany. The situation had evolved around the governmental plans to dissolve the Freikorps movement, and this had in turn led to the Freikorps unit, Marine Brigade Erhard, under the leadership of Naval Captain Hermann Erhard, marched on Berlin to neutralize the Weimar Republic in one swift stroke. This led in turn to a full-blown rebellion in the industrial Ruhr region, where units of the Red Ruhr Army erected barricades and intense street battles raged between the communists and governmental troops. The Erhard Brigade had allied itself with the conservative politician Wolfgang Kapp, who was meant to take power. In the same time, the Freikorps units had seized Berlin and its surroundings. However, the so-called Kapp Putsch failed just about 100 hours after Captain Erhard had marched his unit to Berlin, much due to a workers' general strike, and on the 17th of March 1920, the Freikorps in Berlin stood down and was granted amnesty. However, in the Ruhr, the fighting raged on until the 12th of April 1920. The Freikorps was, however, successful in Ruhr and was able to smash the uprising completely. The aftermath was noticeably bloody, and summary executions were common practice. But it was not before the Third Silesian Uprising in 1921 that Freikorps Oberland would gain any significant fame. The third and the two preceding uprisings in Upper Silesia was much due to Poland's land claims of historical German lands after the Versailles Treaty, with both Great Britain and France supporting Poland with arms and even soldiers. The conflict was evolving to something much bigger than just a loosely organized Polish rebellion. The culmination of the conflict would be the Battle of Annaberg on the 21st of May 1921. On the 3rd of May 1921, Polish forces started an offensive towards Annaberg and easily routed the small German unit defending the area. During the next 2 weeks, the Germans were bolstering their ranks and calling up volunteers from Germany. Lieutenant General von Hulsen would lead the southern force, and Lieutenant Colonel Gruntzen would lead the forces in the north through the forest. Most of the German force consisted of locally recruited men from Selbstschutz Oberschlesien, but also included volunteers made up of young students from the Bavarian town of Erlangen. The situation stabilized with the arrival of Freikorps Oberland on the eve of the battle. The battle started 2:30 a.m. on the 21st of May 1921 with the advance of Oberland and Silesian Self-Protection Unit, the SSOS, from a hill just north of Annaberg. They were met by a regiment-sized unit of Polish insurgents raised in the town of Pless, led by Franciszek Rataj. The Germans completely lacked supportive units such as artillery. Von Hulsen later recalled that, "We learned then how painful it could be to mount an assault on a fortified position without a single piece of artillery." The Polish counterattacked several times but were driven back by the Oberland, who defended their positions with grenades and even bayonets. After 7 hours of heavy combat, the Germans managed to force the Pless regiment to withdraw and then concentrated their attack on the neighbouring regiment of Polish volunteers from Katowice. At around 11 a.m, the Germans started to methodically advance towards the Annaberg hill, led by the Finsterlin battalion from the northwest, the assault detachment Heinz from the southwest, the Österreicher battalion from the east, and the Sebringhaus battalion and the Eike company from the southeast. Under relentless German pressure, the Poles, after heavy hand-to-hand combat, withdrew east. The subsequent Polish counterattack was repelled, and the success of the Freikorps was widely reported in Germany, as it was regarded as the first German victory since November 1918. In November 1921, the Freikorps Oberland was disbanded, but it instantly re-emerged as Bund Oberland, or Oberland Society in English, and was interned in the German organizational register in December the same year. The veterinarian Friedrich Weber was made leader of the organization. During Weber's leadership, the organization would continue on a radical nationalist, putschist and Völkisch course. Initially, the membership was quite small, possibly not even exceeding 1,000 members in early 1922. In 1923, the Bund Oberland became more publicly visible, and in September 1923, Oberland was present during the massive German Day rally in the Franconian city of Nuremberg. It was during the rally that the Deutsche Kampfbund umbrella was formed. It initially consisted of the Nazi paramilitary force, the SA, led by Hermann Göring, Bund Reichsflag, led by Adolf Heiss, and Bund Oberland. The military leadership of the Kampfbund was held by Colonel Hermann Kriebel, an older officer and close confidant of both Weber and Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler assumed the political leadership of the Kampfbund on the 25th of September 1923. The Deutsche Kampfbund was formed for one purpose, and that was to overthrow the Weimar Republic. The Kampfbund held Mussolini's march on Rome as an example on how to execute these plans. The plan was for the joint Kampfbund to first march on Munich, seize it, and then march on Berlin. On the 8th of November 1923, the dictatorial leader in Bavaria, Gustav Ritter von Kahr, had gathered a big crowd in the famous Munich Beer Hall, the Bürgerbraukeller, together with the head of the Bavarian police, Hans von Seisser, and Colonel Otto von Lossow. They aimed to address the intoxicated crowd in the beer hall. A few weeks prior, the leader of the NSDAP, Adolf Hitler, had secret talks with von Kahr about a joint action towards Berlin. But as the weeks progressed without anything happening, Hitler began to understand that he had been duped by von Kahr, who simply had played Hitler for his own interests, and most importantly, to keep Hitler on a leash. The enraged Hitler took a following of a few hundred SA and occupied the entrance to the Bürgerbraukeller. Hitler climbed a table, fired his pistol into the ceiling, and proclaimed that the national revolution had begun. Hitler, alongside the SA, then occupied the beer hall and arrested the 3 men on the stage. In another beer hall not far away, Ernst Röhm was waiting anxiously by the phone with a few hundred volunteers from his Bund Reichskriegsflagge. Apart from Röhm, Ludwig Oestreicher, who distinguished himself at the Battle of Annaberg, led a big contingent armed members from the Oberland, which during the putsch took Jews as hostages. The day after, Bund Oberland joined the SA and marched towards the Feldherrnhalle. At the Odeonsplatz in central Munich, the route was blocked by armed police which opened fire. In the crossfire, 14 putschists died. Among them was the Oberland member Hans Rickmers. His unit took over the guarding duty of the main entrance of the Bürgerbraukeller beer hall that same night. At noon the next day, the 5th Company of Bund Oberland, which Rickmers belonged to, spearheaded the march on the Feldherrnhalle. He was mortally wounded in the crossfire and died on the 28th of November. Another Oberland member named Klaus von Pape was killed instantly in the crossfire with the police. The putsch attempt had by this point failed badly, with most of the putschists being routed by heavy police fire, and Bund Oberland, along with the Nazi Party, the SA and Bund Reichskriegsflagge, was outlawed on the 9th of November by decree from Gustav von Kahr in his appeal to the public. The trials that followed the putsch sentenced the Oberland leader, Friedrich Weber, alongside Adolf Hitler, to 5 years in prison. Most of the other defendants walked out of the courtroom as free men, while others were given very mild sentences. Both Hitler and Weber would serve their sentences together in the Landsberg prison. In 1925, the ban on Bund Oberland and other organizations involved in the putsch was lifted and the organization was reformed. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this dive into the turbulent history of the Freikorps Oberland, don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating stories. Until next time, keep exploring the past to understand the present.